A number of years ago, you published a video which has since become rather famous, giving advice to young men in their 20s. What this video seems to neglect is the idea that it is even permissible to be a young man in his 20s. These days, masculinity is a bad word. Masculinity is evil, it is toxic, it is violent.
The video doesn't lack that.
Perhaps the most memorable idea you put forward is clean your room as a metaphor of getting your life in order. How are we supposed to get our lives in order when we are told to not even be men in the first place?
Well, it's certainly, the fact that you're told not to be men in the first place actually doesn't interfere with your ability to clean up your room. It just demoralizes you. And well, that's not the same thing. Like, I'm not saying that the demoralization is not profound, because it is. I mean, a lot of things happen to boys and young men. I mean, first of all, boys are punished by the school system purely for being boys. Their play preferences are not taken into account. And so the school system, it's tilted against girls and boys in a terrible way, because it was instituted in the late 1800s to produce obedient workers and not sovereign citizens, let's say. And so it's hard on girls too, but it's even harder on boys, because boys tend to play very actively and frenetically, especially if they're assertive. And schools don't like that at all. And then if they escape from that, well, then the next accusation is something like all masculine ambition is nothing but a manifestation of the pathology of the patriarchy, and they get about four years of that. And if they escape from that unscathed, which they don't, the next accusation is, plus everything you do is just destroying Gaia, Mother Earth. And so, and that's a form of nature worship, by the way, and that's often accompanied by child sacrifice in the ancient world, and that's not the least bit surprising, and it's exactly what's happening now, and that's also no joke. It's exactly right. And so that is demoralizing, but it's always been the case that the hero, let's say, has been opposed by the serpent of the state and by the serpent itself. And the fact that demoralization on a large scale is actually occurring is no excuse for young men it provides no excuse for young men to fail to stand up for themselves. It actually instead it provides them with a temptation to abandon their responsibility by accepting the doctrine that everything they do that's ambitious is evil. And you say, well, that's beaten into their heads. It's like, not exactly. It's offered to them as a temptation. The problem with responsibility is that it's burdensome, it's heavy. It's the cross you have to bear, you could put it that way. And the temptation offered by the ideologues is that you can just assume that that's a manifestation of patriarchal power and the destructive force that tears the environment apart, and you can dispense with that and pursue your idiot hedonistic short-term whims. And many people fall for that. And it's appalling on the part of the state actors who perpetuate that doctrine, but it's equally appalling on the part of the young men that swallow it. Now, they still need guidance out of it. And you might say, well, you're so demoralized you can't get a toehold, and that's only because you lack humility. If you can't clean up your room, you can clean up half your sock drawer. And maybe that's where you have to start. I'm dead serious. I had lots of clients in my clinical practice who lived at home in their 30s. They were completely bloody useless, and they knew it. And cleaning up their room was a task they hadn't managed to undertake independently for 18 years. And so they weren't going to go and do it just because we talked about it for, an hour in therapy. But you could scale the task back until you found some little thing that was somewhat of an improvement that they could and would do. And that's where they had to start. And so if you want to sort yourself out, get on your knees and find a task small enough that someone as useless as you can manage it, and start there.